Hey, digital world, welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced In Later, our last episode for 2023. It's been a hell of a year. In many instances, it was one of the longest years of my life, and in others, apparently, I thought yesterday was January. It's insane. Been a lot of good stuff this year. I'm pretty happy with the trajectory of the show so far, especially with the recent focus primarily on YouTube. I think that's the direction to go here. I know this place isn't the most technical, the most easy to watch or listen to. I know I have some very specific, dedicated listeners, so I do appreciate those people who have stuck with me if it's been for the last 4 years or the last couple months. However, I love movies. I love TV shows, old, new, anything. I love everything about them, so it's nice to have an outlet to talk about. But we're here for one specific thing, and it's the bread and butter of anyone who reviews movies on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. It's when you get to that point at the end of the year, when you look back on everything you've seen, everything you've reviewed, and you can officially give to the masses Spliced In Later's top 10 movies of 2023. A list that will undoubtedly cause people to be annoyed, angry, upset, spark fierce name-calling, the worst parts of humanity. No, maybe not. Probably the other opposite effect, which is that no one will really care. I do enjoy my top 10s. I've been doing them quite a lot on the show. A lot of the times during the years, I throw out a couple from previous years. Sometimes I rank specific genres, superhero films, Quentin Tarantino films, Pokemon films, that sort of stuff. But the big one that I do always look forward to are the top 10s of the year that we're actually going through, because it's something that I think about a lot during the year, especially as I'm making my reviews. And if you're a regular listener on the show, you can go and check out those other reviews, or you can remember how we've talked about this stuff, how my opinion may or not have changed, yada, 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 yada. These episodes also then tend to be longer than usual, and I apologize for that. I tend to ramble. Often my introductions are longer than my episode's content itself. That's just who I am, I guess. But we'll try and get over the hump of that. We'll get into it as quick as possible, and we'll try and keep this to around the 30-minute mark. Probably more likely 40, but we'll see how we go. Now, I've seen a lot of movies this year. I put off this list until the last possible day where I think that I could catch every movie in 2023 that I'm going to see. For reasons that boggle the mind, I wanted to make sure Aquaman 2 had a chance to be included on here, and that doesn't matter. Anyway, I could have done this weeks ago, to be honest, because not much has really changed, which is pretty good. It's good when the things that you like are solid and they lock themselves in, and you're not flippant about it. It doesn't change too much. You know what you like, and that's good. It's you focus on what you enjoy, and no one else can change your mind on that one. Some housekeeping before we get into it is that I saw a lot of movies this year, but I did not see everything. It's literally impossible for anybody to see everything. I never saw that Napoleon movie. There's been a few movies that have come out recently that I haven't had a chance to see, such as The Holdovers, Poor Things, a few movies which are probably contenders for Oscar winners, and most likely when I do watch them, would probably get themselves on the top 10. But as I've said many times, and a lot of people do, you cannot put something on your list if you haven't seen it. Just because someone says a movie's good doesn't mean you go, oh, okay, well then it's in my top 10s as well. In the future, this list will change. In the way that I've been going back and doing lists from previous years, I'm always constantly watching stuff that has happened years ago. Recently, the last Christmas I loaded up on some more movies, and there's things on there such as Amsterdam, which only came up a couple years ago, and the Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins, which was many, many years ago. And I'm sure there are movies that will be incredible and movies that will be trash. But everyone's list is always subjective to change. As of recording this list covers all the movies that I saw within 2023 that came out in 2023. Anything that was officially released in 2022 and bled over into 2023 doesn't count. Anything that came out earlier due to film festivals or later due to worldwide releases, it's just the very first public release of this film. If it's in 2023 and I've seen it, it counts. And again, all lists are subjective. My list is not definitively the best well-made movies, the movies that everybody likes and are Academy or Oscar Award winners. It's movies based on my personal taste. I always acknowledge that the movies that are on my top 10 are not necessarily the best films of the year. They're just mine. They're just Spliced In Later's favorites. They're the ones that I enjoyed the most. They're the ones that I will probably go back and rewatch. Arguably, some should be higher than others if you're thinking from a technical aspect or the impact on cinema as a culture. But sometimes I love a good superhero movie. I love a good stupid action movie. I love some dumb comedy. So that's really going to influence what my top 10 are. As I've said many times before, people will disagree. If you do, I'm always interested to know what other people's top 10s are. If you want to let me know, feel free in the comments. No one ever has, but maybe 2023 will be the year. You don't have to let me know. Feel free to make your own list. Sometimes it's just fun just making your own list and just being proud of yourself. Everyone loves to pat themselves on the back. And one final little thing that has nothing to do with this, but just something people should know. I made a terrible mistake. I got cat toys for my cats for Christmas, and I actually forgot about them. They were under my sink. I remembered them this morning and were like, I've got to give my cats their cat toys. Not remembering that I was about to record one of the most important videos of Spliced In Later's content. So if you hear scampering, if you hear yowling, if you hear the sound of a ball with bells bouncing around, that's me not realizing what those two things will have in common with each other. But they love them, they're enjoying them, and I'm not about to take them away from them after I just gave them. That would be cruel. So yeah, just if you think, oh, the production quality is a bit shit, that's par for the course on here. That's nothing to be surprised about. All right, all the housekeeping out of the way. We're already 7 minutes in. We haven't even started. Let's get into it. Spliced In Later's top 10 movies of 2023. Coming in at number 10, we have Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Came out early in the year, around March time, starring Chris Pine and friends, based on the role-playing phenomenon that is Dungeons & Dragons. This movie was in contest with a few others to be in the top 10 spot. Actually, the quality of movies this year was quite good. There were quite a few movies that didn't make it on the list that I really wanted to be on there, such as the top 10 spot is always contestable because that's the last chance these movies have to get on the list. But when it came down to it, when I was thinking about the movies that I had the most fun with at the theaters, the movies that surprised me, the movies that I've enjoyed on a rewatch, and movies that I've been able to recommend to people of a variety of reasons, Dungeons & Dragons clinches that. It's a really fun adventure film with Chris Pine and his friends as they all work together to take down very nefarious Hugh Grant and his evil Red Witch and save Chris Pine's daughter. Very simple stuff. Obviously, with Dungeons & Dragons as a role-playing culture, it's a larger grand scheme of things. It's not something you can sort of adapt directly, I think, especially when everyone has different campaigns, different ways of doing it. And I think there was a lot of worry about how they would actually do it, but still honor the context of the world and how they did it. And I think it really succeeded in that. I'm not fully aware of Dungeons & Dragons, but I played a little bit of it here and there. So I get some of the references. I get how it works. And I think it was fairly faithful. And I think the public reception to it was generally, yeah, for a Dungeons & Dragons, this is pretty good. Maybe it's leaning more towards an Avengers-style film with a bunch of misfits that have to team up together to overthrow an evil threat. But that's basic Dungeons & Dragons. You get a bunch of people together and they go on a campaign together. I thought the performances were really good. I really loved Chris Pine. He's charismatic in mostly everything he does, but I really enjoyed him as the protagonist of the film. I thought Hugh Grant was always good in his scene-chewing villainy. Hugh Grant's really come into his own recently as an elder actor, just with the types of roles he's playing. He's not just the aw shucks guy from Love Actually and Notting Hill. He can do all sorts of really weird, baddie stuff, and I thought he was fantastic in here. Michelle Rodriguez, Justice Smith, the guy from Bridgerton. There was some good stuff in there. Lots of good fantasy as well. A good balance between comedy and seriousness. And I think it was accessible to all people. I showed this movie to my mother, who has absolutely no interest in Dungeons & Dragons. And I was very confident that she would like it. And she did. She had a good time with it. So I think whether you're a huge Dungeons & Dragons aficionado or if you just love a good fantasy adventure movie, this is for it. I don't think it did well at the box office. I don't know if we'll get more. I would love to see more adventures with these characters. But for now, as a standalone thing, Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves was a very surprising, fun, excellent time at the movies and on a rewatch, and solidly at number 10. Coming in at number 9, the direct opposite of that, because I don't know when I want to see this other film again, but thinking about how it affected me watching it, I've thought about it over and over again, it definitely needs to be on the list just in terms of its impact. It's Saltburn. Saltburn, the film from Emerald Fennell, which came out quite recently, I think. I've seen it a lot in advertisements, so I don't know if it's only like publicly been released now, and I actually saw an advanced screening. I'm not really sure. Doesn't really matter. Irrelevant to this list here. Let's keep going. But it stars the wonderful Barry Keoghan as Oliver, who develops an unhealthy fixation/friendship with Felix Jacob Elordi while they're together at Oxford or Cambridge, whichever one it is, and then very slowly ingratiates himself into Felix's life in a very disturbing way, to a point where it all culminates when he's invited to Felix's family home of Saltburn, where he mixes with his mother and father and sister and cousin. It's an uncomfortable watch. It's something that is a black comedy, so you'll laugh at things that are obviously funny, and then other times you'll laugh because you just cannot comprehend what you're watching. Whether it's Barry Keoghan kneeling down in bath water that has been added to by a certain sexual practice, and licking the drain, or lying naked on a grave. There's some weird shit in here. And I remember watching it in the theaters and just being like, what the fuck is this? And people around me were the same, and some people couldn't even contain themselves. I'm like, what the hell? But not in like a gross out, disgusting, this is too much for cinema. Like, I get why they showed that, and it was a real understanding of Oliver's character and messed upness that you had to sort of do it. And I do think like there are very few movies this year where the feelings I were feeling were feelings I had not felt before, and that was definitely what Saltburn did to me. It's a good showcasing of classism as well. The rich versus the poor. Are rich people truly happy? Do poor people want to be rich? What's the line between those two? And then just some real good commentary on unhealthy relationships, obsession, if you will. Barry Keoghan, fantastic. He's one of my favorite actors out there at the moment. Everything he's in, I love him in. He was absolutely mesmerizing in this thing, sometimes in a funny way and sometimes in a, oh God, I can't look away way. And the supporting cast too, Jacob Elordi. Side note, I called him Jordan Elordi a lot during my review of Saltburn. Apologies. I'm sure he's very upset about that. He was very nice, very wholesome, I thought. There wasn't anything sinister about him, but he was just fun to see him as just a genuinely seemed to be nice guy. And then you've got supporting players from Rosamund Pike and Richard E. Grant, Carey Mulligan. I remember I specifically liked Richard E. Grant's weird comedy where he just doesn't seem to be aware of what's happening around him. He just really wants to wear his suit of armor to a party. It's a really beautifully shot film with some great visuals. But yeah, that feeling I felt watching it continues to stick with me. So Saltburn has to lock itself in at number 9. Coming in at number 8, I assume would be a lot higher on other people's lists, is Killers of the Flower Moon, the latest Martin Scorsese epic, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and basically showcasing the horrible murders of the Native American people during this period of time where white businessmen were killing them to take their land, take their gold because they'd struck oil, and just how no one was really doing anything about it because racism and white people suck. It is a very well done movie, as most Scorsese films are, and also very tough to watch because it is a very dark period in American history. Incredible performances. People are saying, oh, DiCaprio is great. He always is. Especially as like a unlikable character, but also kind of sympathetic character, just in terms of what he's doing in the movie. I won't spoil too much about it because it is a movie I think people should go and watch and see. But he's the protagonist, but he's not the good guy of sorts. And seeing him flounder and squirm is both mesmerizing and upsetting. De Niro, people saying it's the best De Niro performance in years. I think that's unfair because The Irishman only came out a few years ago. But he's really great in it too. Lily Gladstone was the scene-stealing knockout performance in the movie as the only real, pure, likable character in this thing. Somebody who is put through hell and you just want them to get ahead of them and get a break. And due to the context of the film, that's really not going to happen. In Scorsese fashion, it's mesmerizing as a story. The movie's over 3 hours, almost 3.5 hours long, but the length doesn't feel that. You are pulled in because it balances the telling of the story in a very, very enrapturing way. You're not sitting there going, all right, okay, it's been an hour, we've got 2 more to go. You are just watching this series of horrible events just play out, and the performances and the directing and the engagement with you has just you glued to your seat. I drank a big thing of Coke when I watched this, refused to leave the cinema to go and pee. It may not be one of Scorsese's best, which is why I haven't ranked it higher, because there are a lot of other Scorsese films that I think are better and I would watch over this. But in terms of just, again, a cinematic experience, really showcasing what it is to make a movie, especially in the current climate where it's all superhero films, IP brands, box office failures. It's nice that there are still filmmakers that are really showcasing what it is that they can do with film when given the chance, rather than just make this thing that we can sell toys later on. Truly mesmerizing film, great stuff. Scorsese still got it. I hope he's still got some more in the tank. But Killers of the Flower Moon, number 8. Coming in at number 7, another movie again that people will probably rank higher, Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer and Killers of the Flower Moon really fought each other to see which one would triumph over the other. But Oppenheimer, I think I got more out of. I think I like Christopher Nolan's direction of this film, and I liked the way it was played out. It was more engaging, I think, as an audience rather than Killers of the Flower Moon. Killers of the Flower Moon, you just felt bad, as is the design. But Oppenheimer, you're more scared. You watch how these people, especially Oppenheimer, through desperation to achieve something that has never been achieved before, that they unlock the potential for humanity to destroy itself, and then the fallout afterwards as people start to realize what they've done, but also the scramble to then build on that and make something even worse, is a truly nightmarish scenario, which is something, that's why those minutes to midnight, whatever it is, I think we're at like 1 minute to midnight. The apocalypse is coming, people. But yeah, it's Christopher Nolan's biopic of J. Robert Oppenheimer, played to perfection by Cillian Murphy, and probably his best performance he's ever done. Sort of a biopic of his life, but mainly focusing on 2 very important points in his life, which is the lead up to him developing the atomic bomb, and then his public disgracing afterwards, where another stellar performance from Robert Downey Jr. as Strauss, who has this vendetta against Oppenheimer and wants to take him down for humiliating him and also wanting to build hydrogen bombs, and Oppenheimer being like, wait, no, hang on, what I've done isn't good, we should slow it down. It's a real analysis of him as a character, because it doesn't play him as both the hero or the villain. He's a very nuanced character. He's very aware of what he's unlocking when he wants to unlock the atomic bomb, but he wants to be the person to do it. And then for him to be afterwards like, oh wait, hang on, that's bad, we shouldn't do that. It's like, well, why did you do it? It's a mix of him being horrified by what he's done, but also the catch-22 of being like, but I was going to do it regardless of the results anyway. A good assortment of supporting players here as well. Emily Blunt, Matt Damon, Florence Pugh, but really it's Cillian Murphy as Oppenheimer that absolutely sells this. And the intense, unsettling direction of Christopher Nolan, the way the movie is just constantly going, the music's always playing, the direction's constantly whipping back and forth, the story is constantly being pelted at you, characters are coming and going. It unsettles you, but because it's all building to that very important point, probably more than halfway through the film, when that atomic bomb is finally gone off, and it's a mesmerizing thing to see, and also highlights just the horror of what they've just done. And then afterwards, the fallout of Oppenheimer and Strauss's Senate proceedings that's going on there. Again, it's a very engaging movie that is long but doesn't feel it, because you are constantly enamored by what you're seeing. Yeah, between this and Killers of the Flower Moon, it's close, but Oppenheimer, I think I got a lot more out of. I remember that cinematic experience a lot more. I thought Cillian Murphy was absolutely incredible. I would watch him play Oppenheimer for another 3 hours if I could. Truly great. Another example of film being film. Somewhat a director knowing what they want to do and using their art form to create something unique that Oppenheimer really highlights. So, absolutely, number 7. All right, we've left behind the cinematic masterpieces. Now we're getting into Jordan's bread and butter, which is just fucking awesome, entertaining movies. We're coming in at number 6 with John Wick Chapter 4, the 4th chapter in the legendary Keanu Reeves John Wick action saga, and most likely the final entry. The John Wick movies have been a surprise in how good they've been the last few years. What started as a very simple, solid action movie of just Keanu Reeves wants to get revenge for these people because they killed his dog. It's not really what the dog, it's what the dog represents that he's trying to go after revenge for. But very slowly, it's the world building. It's opening up this larger world that John Wick is actually part of this secret society of assassins that operate basically in broad daylight in New York and all over the world, all lorded over by this superpower called the High Table. And John Wick, through his actions, is just pissing people off and causing more and more people to come after him. I've loved it that John Wick movies, over 4, have seemed to really only take place like a couple of months in John Wick's time. But I thought John Wick was good. I thought John Wick Chapter 2 was great. I thought John Wick Chapter 3 was fantastic. So I was really excited for this one, and it did not disappoint. It's very long, but again, it doesn't feel its length because the action doesn't stop. And there's a real sense of finality to it, where John Wick is really going against everything to find peace, to protect his friends, to get back at the people that have wronged him. But mainly, it's just a fucking great action film. The things we see, the way the movie is shot as well. There's an overhead shot of John Wick like going through a house and just blasting people with like a fire gun, which is fantastic. But it never loses sight of the heart of the film, which is just John Wick as an individual is just looking for peace, looking for people to leave him the hell alone, to stop influencing people when they shouldn't, and just kick ass. He's really great in it. I've Donnie Yen as well as like the main person he has to fight against forcibly in the film. Donnie Yen is forced into fighting John Wick, but he's got that cool, blind, drunken master spirit, and he's fantastic. I love when he's constantly swearing, which is pretty good too. Ian McShane, as always, great. Lawrence Fishburne, as always, great. We get our one of our last appearances of Lance Reddick before he sadly passed away. One of my favorite characters. Sadly, he doesn't get to do that much in the film, but he has an important moment which I think really sets the movie in an important direction. It's a finality to it as well. The way a John Wick story ends at the end of this, I don't know how you would do a John Wick Chapter 5. I don't know if you should do a John Wick Chapter 5. But it sticks the landing 100%. It's the perfect ending to the John Wick story that we've done. It's built on the action to enormous degrees. It's always, every movie, it's always got better and better and better. The world building has got larger and larger to a point where you understand the world, but you can still be surprised by it. It's truly just a fun franchise that has really been solid since it first debuted back in 2014, I think was the first John Wick. Truly great. I was very anticipating it, and it did not disappoint. John Wick Chapter 4, number 6. Coming in at number 5, we have Creed 3, the third film in the Creed franchise, starring Michael B. Jordan, which is an extension of the Rocky franchise. We all know Rocky Balboa, the underdog boxer who always goes the distance against insurmountable odds. With Creed 3, Rocky is officially put to the side, and the focus is now primarily on Adonis Creed, Michael B. Jordan, who is the son of Rocky's former rival and best friend, Apollo Creed. In this film, it's really a nice natural evolution of him as a character, where he started in the originals as the rookie, the up-and-comer boxer. Now by Creed 3, he is the master. He's running his own boxing gym. He's gone the distance. He doesn't need to keep boxing. They keep saying he's old, which is wild because Michael B. Jordan isn't old, but I guess in the boxing world, yeah, he's probably a bit old to be taking punches. But he has to deal with a real personal struggle when a childhood friend of his, Damien, who was in juvie, comes back. And there's some history between the two involving a a shooting and a robbery and juvenile foster home, whatever. But Damien was the boxer. He was the one who was supposed to be famous and powerful, and then his life went one direction, so he couldn't do it. So he comes back to Creed, be like, hey, help me, give me my chance. Feeling a sense of guilt, Creed's like, yeah, okay, I'll help you out. But turns out Damien's out for a little bit more than just his shot. He wants revenge, and he wants to take down Creed's reputation, and he doesn't care who he has to hurt, how dirty he has to fight. He's going to become the champion. So then Creed, in true Rocky fashion, has to go in for one last fight to take in his friend. I will say very briefly, I thought Jonathan Majors was fantastic in the film. He's probably the best part about it. Playing Damien as this tortured soul. He's the best performance in it by far. I don't want to talk too much about it though, because obviously Majors has fallen into some badness. And, you know, it's the less said about it, the better. But he's really great in it. Michael B. Jordan doesn't let us down as Creed. He's solid. Tessa Thompson is his wife, Bianca. Great too. But what really sells the film for me is the personal nature of it. You know, with the Rocky films, it always escalated. You know, first it was Creed, then he fought some slanderer, then he literally fought the Soviet Union. Creed 2 looked to be going that way, where Creed starts off just to go the distance, and he's got to fight the son of his father's killer. But in this, it's not high stakes in terms of the boxing world as a whole. It really comes down to just this real personal beef, years of upsettedness between Creed and Damien, to the point when the final boxing fight goes in, it doesn't really matter who's watching. It's this very intimate, especially well shot by Michael B. Jordan in his directorial debut, to a point where there's like a cage on the ring, and it's just the two of them just wailing on each other, and the screaming, and the years and years of resentment and sadness and all of that just works so well in the context of it. Aside from that, all the other Creed stuff and Rocky stuff that I love is here. The come from behind win, the montage. I think Damien is a very interesting new villain to add to the Rocky world, especially the way he fights dirty, but just the personal nature of it too. It's really, really good. For a long time, Creed 3 was the number one movie on this list, and it was upset by the upcoming 4, but truly fantastic film, number 5. Coming in at number 4, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. In a year where Marvel seemed to struggle, where movies were subpar or okay, and TV shows infuriated me to no end, at the very least, there was a shining beacon, which was Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the third and final installment in James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy that finishes the story for this iteration of the superhero team. James Gunn's Guardians have always been something special. They exist within the world of the MCU, but they've got their own style, their own feel. They essentially exist in their own world because they're in space. James Gunn is a fantastic director, and he's a fantastic writer. He's always managed to write these incredibly emotional, powerful stories against the most ridiculous characters. He made Polka Dot Man a sympathetic character in the Suicide Squad. And if I could give you a whole episode on how great that Peacemaker show is, I would, but I will. Maybe I would. What's stopping me? I don't know. But it's a real emotional, personal story about the origins of Rocket Raccoon, how he was tortured and experimented on by this asshole of a villain called the High Evolutionary. And then when the High Evolutionary comes back to get at Rocket because he needs him for his twisted plan to create the perfect world, the Guardians have to rally together and save their buddy while also dealing with a time-displaced Gamora who has no memories of the previous Gamora, and the incessant badgering of Adam Warlock, this ultra-powered guy who's out to kill them because he was told to. It's so good. If you haven't seen Guardians 3 because it's like, oh, Marvel movies aren't great anymore, that would be a shame. It was probably the only Marvel thing that was profitable this year, so I guess not a lot of people haven't seen it. But it's emotional, it's powerful, it looks great, classic James Gunn directing. The Guardians are all on form, none of them have missed a beat. Chris Pratt, Dave Bautista, Karen Gillan, Zoe Saldana, even Vin Diesel as Groot. It's nice to see Groot up to a level where you know it's Vin Diesel playing him again, rather than just voicing a little CGI guy. I've always preferred Big Groot over Little Groot. But it's really Rocket's film. Bradley Cooper gives a very emotional performance giving Rocket's origins. It's upsetting to watch. It's probably one of the most violent disturbing entries in the MCU, and it really elevates the story and the stakes. And Chukwudi Iwuji's performance as the High Evolutionary is terribly good. He's the first villain in a long time that you absolutely despise. You want him to have the worst possible death and imaginable because he just is the worst. But he plays him in the way that you can't look away. He's incredibly enjoyable to watch, but you despise him to no end. And that's an incredible talent that Chukwudi Iwuji has to bring that character to life. Obviously, James Gunn's done with the Guardians films, and this film really wraps up this iteration. By the end of it, Quill, Nebula, Drax, they've all got their endings. Whether they're happy or not, you'll just have to watch the movie to see. But it's definitely my favourite of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Up there with some of the best MCU films of all time. And up there with some of the best movies of all time. To discount any superhero film just because it's a superhero film is insane. And if anyone ever says that to you, just show them any of these Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Ideally, show them in the chronological order so they get the benefit of experiencing this emotional journey that these characters went on. And hopefully that would make them realize, oh, I'm a bit of a prick. But Guardians 3, wonderful, emotional, powerful, funny, and great on rewatches. Solid film, number 4. Coming in at number 3, let me just check my notes because 3 and 2 swapped a lot this morning as well. Yes, okay, we're ready. Number 3 is Neona. Neona is an animated film that's currently available on Netflix, done by, I believe, Blue Sky, the people behind Ice Age. It was a sleeper hit animated film that I don't think anyone really knew about until suddenly it was out, and then word of mouth was like, you got to check out this film. I know I had one friend that wouldn't leave me alone, just kept saying you have to watch Neona. And I'm like, yeah, okay, one day I will. And then I did, and I wish I'd listened to him earlier so that I could have enjoyed the film for more of the year just in my brain. Neona is this wonderful, interesting animated world where what if knights and all of that stuff just existed in the real world, like technology just sort of evolved around them. In this kingdom where a knight is framed for the murder of the queen, and in order to clear his name and find out what's going on within the kingdom, teams up with this mysterious young girl called Neona, who is like a shapeshifter. She can shapeshift into all sorts of animals. And on their quest to clear his name, it really turns into who Neona is, what her origins are, and the bond between the two of them. Neona is a fucking fantastic film. It's so emotional and it looks so good watching it. The animation style is very reminiscent of Spider-Man or Puss in Boots of recent years, where it's just taking animation and doing something different with it, making it more vibrant, not just the standard Shrek look that everybody's doing. Disney and DreamWorks, they always seem to stick to that most of the time. I loved the world. It was a really interesting world of knights, but with trains and phones and things like that. And the lead performances, Riz Ahmed as the knight, and Chloe Grace Moretz as Neona. One of the most tragic characters I've ever seen. Such an upsetting story that she goes on, her origins, what she's hiding. It really pushes to the forefront, which hasn't been done, I think, in a lot of animated films for kids as well, which is mental health, which is something that I think a lot of people need to be aware of young, so they're not surprised by it when it hits them like a freight train when they're older. The music's fantastic. I've done a whole thing on how Neona is great. There's a whole other episode you can go and check that out, and I'm aware of how long this episode's going for. But Neona is just awesome, and it's readily available for you on Netflix. It's really great. It's better than anything Disney's given this year or in the last couple of years. It's better than anything DreamWorks or most animation production companies there. And the fact that this movie nearly didn't see the light of day because of the Disney acquisition and all of that is terribly frightening, because it's just so good. It should win Best Animated Film of the Year, even though my top film is also an animated film. But Neona needs to love. So if you haven't seen Neona, see it. If you have, tell your friends about it. It's fantastic. Emotional roller coaster. Number 3. Coming in at number 2, it's Barbie. I love Barbie. Barbie's a fantastic film that I knew I would like going into it, especially with Margot Robbie as Barbie, Ryan Gosling as Ken, and directed by Greta Gerwig. But I didn't realize how much it would affect me, not just in terms of the comedy, but even just the story, Barbie's emotional journey and the struggle for her to become her own individual, and Ryan Gosling's Ken to find the right balance between not being subservient to Barbie, but then not embracing the toxic masculinity that exists in this real world. He essentially is the villain of the film, and that was quite the surprise. The colors, it looks great. There's a nice balance between being in the Barbie world and the real world. They do a really good job of selling it. It's silly, but it's like really fun silly. All the different Barbies, all the different Kens. Even in the real world, you've got some really funny stuff with Will Ferrell's CEO of Mattel. But really, the movie stands out for me because of Ryan Gosling's Ken. He's mesmerizing to watch. He's incredibly funny, emotional in a lot of bits too. That I'm Just Ken song, fantastic. Barbie's one of those films which is just fun. We need more of these types of films where you don't need to take it too seriously. It's not there to create a larger cinematic world or strike big at the Oscars or make you think about all these different things. I mean, there's a lot in there about what it is to be a woman, which I think if you watch this film and be like, I don't need to know that, I get it, stop hitting me over the head, I think you're missing the point of why you need to be hit over the head with it. But anyway, that's another point entirely. Putting all of that aside though, it's just fun. If you're just feeling blue, or if you're just ready to have a good laugh, or if you just want to see some really funny performances, this is the movie for you. You put it on, you're guaranteed to have a good time. And I think in a world where we've got serious biopics and superhero cinematic universes and all of that, it's nice just to have just a fun movie. Barbie's great, especially on a rewatch. It doesn't get old. Number 2. All right, before we get into our number 1, as usual, here are too many honourable mentions, movies that almost made it into that coveted 10th spot, but didn't. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. I love the Shazam characters, and I think this movie deserved more love than it got. The Covenant from Guy Ritchie. Jake Gyllenhaal goes on a quest to save a guy he left behind in Iraq or Afghanistan. I can't really remember, but really great film. Fast 10, the almost culmination of the Fast and Furious franchise, mainly good for Jason Momoa's villainous Dante. Elemental, a neglected Pixar film that had a real good romance in it, which I really loved. Asteroid City, Wes Anderson-y movie. I know they're all really the same, but I really got a kick out of Asteroid City. Mission Impossible, Dead Reckoning Part 1. Ethan Hunt's more missions, more Tom Cruise jumping off things. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, a solid action film that really increased my love for the Ninja Turtles. Blue Beetle, DC was mostly forgettable this year, but Blue Beetle was a surprise hit, and I wish more people had seen it. A Haunting in Venice, more Hercule Poirot, more murder mysteries. This one was the one that I really think could have been on number 10 if Dungeons & Dragons had fallen from that spot. Great atmospheric ghosts and good mystery. The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, surprisingly good. A bit too long and unbalanced in terms of the story shift, but I really dug the performance from Rachel Zegler. And Wish. Say what you will about Wish, I had a good time with it. I thought it was nice. I think people are too hard on it, but it didn't make the top 10 list, so I'm not going into that. If you want to hear what I think about Wish, go check out the review episode. And coming in at number 1, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. The Spider-Verse movies are something else entirely. They are incredible at taking the multiverse concept, which is being done to death at the moment by every franchise in the world, and using it to support the story, but not just be nostalgia bait and here's this and that and this. Yes, there are cameos in Across the Spider-Verse, but it's all just like tiny little things that you can go, oh, and any things that are larger affect the overall story. Characters that are introduced in a cameo actually stick around and become a part of the film. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is the continuing adventures of Miles Morales, the Spider-Man in this world, who is caught up in this ongoing struggle of spiders in the multiverse, led by Spider-Man 2099, Miguel O'Hara, a very violent vampire-style Spider-Man, dealing with the consequences of the villainous Spot and what he's getting into, destroying fixed points, canon events as they're called. Miles is rebelling against that, meaning he becomes the enemy of the Spider Society, while also dealing with not being able to tell his parents that he is Spider-Man, teaming up again with Spider-Gwen and Peter B. Parker and introducing some more Spider characters. It looks incredible. The animation is good. It always was in Into the Spider-Verse, and they knock it out of the park with Across the Spider-Verse, especially through going all the different Spider-Verse worlds. Some great new characters, some vocal performances from both new and returning. Oscar Isaac is terrifying. Haley Steinfeld is wonderful. Brian Tyree Henry as Miles' father. Great stuff. Even Jason Schwartzman as the Spot is a lot of fun. But primarily, it's Miles' story. Miles is such a incredibly likable protagonist, somebody you want to succeed, someone who has to deal with a lot of shit constantly and always manages to rally and come out on top, which is great. There were a lot of films this year that came out that are part one movies that are only tell half a story and then will like come back in a couple of years to see the next half. Fast 10 did it, Mission Impossible did it, and Spider-Man did it. Of them all, Across the Spider-Verse is the only one which I think works as a part one. It naturally got to a point where you're really excited for part two, where the movie ended, and I'm like, oh my god, no, please, I want to see more of the story. But especially not knowing when the next part's going to go out, this on its own is still a solid movie that has a beginning, a middle, and an end that just keeps rallying and amping the plot and the suspense and the stakes up to a point. It does not let up for the whole way. And if it can keep doing that for part two, that'll be awesome. But part one, solid stuff. The moment I saw it, I knew this will be number one. And nothing even really came close. Barbie, I thought about it, but not really. Across the Spider-Verse is an incredible film, a real good testament to doing multiverse stories right, showing a love for Spider-Man, but not at the expense of the character of Miles Morales, and truly something unique, something we're not getting from other superhero properties. If you're discounting it because you're tired of Spider-Man, give these Spider-Verse movies a chance, because they are something else. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, number one, Spliced In Later's favorite movie of 2023. There you are. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, the episode has run long, but we got a lot of stuff to cover on here, so these things tend to go for a bit. As I wrap up this year, I do want to say thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the people who have listened to all my episodes, to have come and gone for certain bits. Even if you've come just to give me a dislike, it doesn't really matter because it helps the YouTubes. Anyway, I don't have too many people that are as interested in this sort of stuff as I am. So talking to them doesn't necessarily become a two-way conversation. I annoy people and I don't get the interest that I want. So this outlet that I have to talk into this microphone and know that at least somewhere out there is someone who may want to hear what I have to say or is just looking for this sort of outlet as well, it means a lot. And it keeps me sane in a world with pandemics and wars and cost of living and global warming. It's nice that through it all, it's like, oh, it's time to record my new Spliced In Later episode. I'll be taking a break, as I normally do at the end of every year. We'll take a week off to start the year right. And then I'll be back in the second week of January with 2 episodes for you. I'll be talking about a TV show, most likely, and definitely the first of the movies for 2024. And once again, starting to build my top 10s for that year. We get started quite early here on Spliced In Later. But until then, as I said, thank you very much to all of you. It means a lot. I hope you had a good 2023. I hope it was kind to you. I hope you're ready for 2024. Let's keep going. Hopefully, we will survive that one too. Until next time, I love and appreciate you as always. You've been Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.